to the Pikku Kimalainen knitting podcast. My name is Rachel Monima and I'm your host. This is a podcast primarily about knitting. You stop that. Grendel, quit. He's trying to eat my yarn. Anyways, this is a podcast primarily about knitting, and every once in a while I'll sew something or crochet something. But anyways, you can find me on most social media platforms like Instagram and Ravelry. Actually not most, that's about it. But I'm Pikku Kimalainen on Instagram and Pikku Kimalainen on Ravelry. I'll have the links to that down below, as well as links to the group tabs down in the descriptions if you want to introduce yourself or check out this week's notes. So anyways, I think it's been about a week since my last episode. Things have calmed down at my current job quite a bit now, so I have a little bit more energy to knit and to podcast on my days off. When I work a lot or tend to have to engage in a lot of social interaction, I get quite tired, and usually I'll end up sleeping just throughout my days off or day off. It just depends from week to week. I'm sorry, my cat's being really cute. He's sitting here on my lap. But I don't know, right now in my current job we're not as understaffed as we were during the summer, so I should have quite a bit more time to knit and do the things I love rather than just taking, you know, my time off to prepare for the next work day, which typically happens when you work long hours. So anyways, this week I still don't have any finished objects. I've been training for a slightly different position, and so it's taking up a little bit of my time, and I'm just trying to relax and not put too much pressure on myself, although I did agree to knit a Christmas gift for my boss. And I'm going to be knitting it out of chunky yarn, so it knits up a little faster, but it is a gift for somebody they know, and it's a cardigan, and it's going to be quite long, so I think it'll be a good thing to do just to prove to myself that I can still finish things in a short amount of time, because lately I've just been, I don't know, I feel like I've been in this hole and bog, and I'm slowly starting to crawl my way out and eat better and, I don't know, knit more things and have more creative energy. So if you've been watching me since my first episode, thank you for sticking around. I feel free to subscribe if you haven't, for more inconsistent content, but I don't know, I'm feeling a lot better now. And anyways, let's just hop right into works in progress, because that's pretty much the only thing I have to share other than a little acquisition that I purchased for myself on a whim. So yeah. And real quick, I've actually got to go grab some of my works in progress, but my cat's being so cute, I just don't want to stand up. If you can see him, he's just laying there. And he's been quite playful throughout the day, which isn't a bad thing, but he's so much cuter when he's sleepy. But I just feel so bad because I'm going to be putting him down. Oh, he's so cute, look at him. This one's Grendel. Salmiaki's probably sleeping somewhere else. I might go and grab her, just so they can snuggle together while I podcast. The first work in progress I have to show is my Guthrie sweater by Caitlin Hunter. I'm trying to move it carefully so my cats don't go for it. This is it. I finished the bottom ribbing, and I knit the size large, and it's an absolute beast. It's huge and I love it. I'm still going to dye it orange However, so with my next paycheck, I'm going to purchase some more citric acid. Not that it's too expensive, but I am going to purchase a little bottle of Jacquard dye, and I can't remember the exact color that I'm purchasing, but it is sort of a burnt orange, sort of borderline caramel color, and I think it'll be the perfect color just to sort of tone down some of the cooler colors. I really like warm colors to wear personally. I think warm colors don't typically, you know, drown out my face if I hold it up here, so when you're talking to me, you're looking at my face and not like the bright neon blue shirt that I'm wearing. And I also feel more comfortable in it. The warm colors like oranges and browns are sort of an opportunity for me to dress a bit more colorfully without feeling too self-conscious when I go outside. And also, warm colors are very calming for me, and it allows me to sort of maintain a clean looking environment while having a couple cute, you know, pops of color here that make me feel really warm and at home. So obviously fall is my favorite time of year. I've just put up my fall decorations. I'm not really one for seasonal decorations, at least that you pack away. I find it kind of stressful, you know, having a box of junk that you only use, you know, for at least 2 weeks to a month out of a year. That's quite a tangent I was going off on. Anyways, the Guthrie sweater. Anyways, so I finished the bottom hem, or bottom ribbing part. I think last time I showed this to you, I had just started this little blip of these colorwork circles with the X's in the middle, and so I've gotten quite a bit done considering how much I've been working, so I'm very proud of that. One thing I'm not proud of is I did not take into account how much yarn I had. So I knew I was going to be playing yarn chicken with this sweater for quite some time. You know, as soon as I started it, I knew I didn't know exactly how much yarn I had. This is how much yarn I have left of this dark gray color that you see in the sweater. So I'm saving this for the cuffs, so at least it's consistent there. And I'm just looking for dark scrap yarns that I own. I might potentially have to order another skein of Knit Picks Wool of the Andes Tweed in, I can't remember the colorway, but it's their darkest colorway. It's a black tweed, and just sort of substitute it in because that's already in the sweater, so I can at least keep it a little more consistent. However, I'm not too worried about variations because this whole thing is going to be thrown in the dye pot anyways. So if there are, you know, a couple pieces of yarn that stick out a little too much because maybe they're too light of gray, it'll all sort of be toned down and become one cohesive piece after I finish dyeing it, because, you know, those lighter colors will be turned down, of course. So I'm hoping the sweater doesn't get too muddled. I know this section, to me, this looks a bit muddled right here. There's a lot going on in that yarn, so I might potentially go over it with duplicate stitch just in areas where it looks a little too busy and you can't quite see the color work. I do love colorwork sweaters, but this is definitely a lot of color for me to commit to. Some people might think I'm absolutely insane and go, oh, that's not colorful at all, but it's very subtle, and there's very subtle pops of neon in there that I just don't feel 100% comfortable wearing on my body. Not that I don't like the yarn, I think it's absolutely beautiful. I actually have quite a colorful quilt to show. Even though my original goal was starting a new beekeeper's quilt was to tone down the colors, I think I achieved it, but you can still tell there's some neon pops in there, which I think that project will be perfect just to sort of satisfy that hunger deep down inside to knit with completely speckled yarns that are a little bit obnoxious but still very fun to knit with. And I just started the sleeve, and so my tragic game of yarn chicken, I'm losing it. So I ran out of this colorful sort of light blue color with pops. That's my message. That's my phone, I'm sorry. So this is a yarn dyed by Akara Yarns. I'll link her shop down below. And it's this beautiful sort of light blue bird's egg color with pops of yellow and neon pink. And I used it in a children's garment, which I haven't finished yet. But I absolutely love this yarn. It was sort of just a one-off colorway where she was having fun. And as soon as I saw it on her shop update, I purchased it. And anyways, I ran out of this yarn, and what little scrap I have left, I want to at least get 2 more hexapuffs out of it, just because I've already sewn together a lot of my beekeeper's quilt, and I don't want a certain color being clumped together in just one specific part of the quilt. So I'm calling it quits on putting that yarn in this sweater now, because I need it for something else. I do have a little bit more of this yarn, but I think what I'm going to have to do is use more of my Woolen Boon yarn, which you can see in this section, and I'll have to use it to complete the sleeves while substituting in some sort of dark yarn. And most of this yarn that I used is superwash, so I'm not too worried about the different bases mingling in together and making a really weird result after I block it out. And I do have a few pieces that are 100% wool. They aren't, you know, superwash treated. This is sort of my last hurrah with superwash yarn. I'm really trying to get through it and no longer have it as a part of my stash. And I don't really have a big stash either, so it won't be too difficult, and I think this monster will eat up the rest of it. Here you can see I just started to run out of that gray superwash yarn. So right now I'm substituting in one of my hand-dyed yarns and some dark black yarn, which is a Madeline Tosh yarn, Tosh Merino Light in the Void colorway. This is what it looks like. Nothing special, it's black yarn. So I'm going to frog back this little section right here so I can at least have a row of hearts on this sleeve so it's at least symmetrical, and I'll figure it out from there. I used one of my scrapped yarns from an old sweater in this section, and I didn't realize it, but I started running out of that yarn and I'm using it in one other project, so I think I'm going to have to, I don't know, substitute in a different yarn for my other project. I did sort of go through a cast on frenzy in the past couple months, and I was so busy and stressed out and disorganized I didn't really take my stash into account, and at that time I had a lot of yarn, and at least for my standards, and I was getting really stressed out. So I cast on everything and I was like, I'm just gonna use up all this yarn in scrap yarn projects, and now I'm having issues because I did use up all the yarn and now I'm running out of yarn. So I guess I'll see how this goes. If you're a hand dyer and have any tips on getting an even dye throughout garments, feel free to comment down below. I have hand dyed yarn before, and I'm using acid dyes with citric acid, which I have a little bit of experience with. However, I might do a few test rounds just to make sure I can, you know, get that even semi-solid color, at least in a wash rag or something, or a different skein of yarn. Since this sweater is already so colorful, I don't care if there's a little bit of differentiation between concentrations in color throughout the garment. So if there's a slightly darker sleeve than the other one, I don't care. I can just go over it with duplicate stitch, or, you know, dunk the other sleeve into the dye pot. As scary as that sounds. If I sound like an absolute mad woman, that's because I am. I'm sort of diving in with a blindfold on, I feel like. Currently with this project, I did not do any planning whatsoever. I'm pretty sure I cast this on during one of my road trips back to Montana. And so now I'm just trying to make up for that reckless behavior. But as it is, I think this is a very beautiful garment, and I can't wait for the color work to be toned down just a little bit, so it's a little peak of color work. I absolutely love all the patterns in here, but I do want to feel comfortable wearing it. The next work in progress is sort of a work in progress, not quite, because I'll be frogging it back and starting something else, but I'm quite enthusiastic about it, so I thought I might mention it here. Is this little rectangle of fabric. I'm not going to unfold it and show it all to you because there's nothing too special about it. I believe it's knit out of a Patton's yarn. Again, I'm trying to use up all the superwash yarn in my stash, so some of it is quite old and I just don't have the labels for it. But sorry, my cat's being cute. I'm going to frog this whole thing back, which kind of breaks my heart because this was a lot of work. And I'm going to knit it up into the wild grass sweater and then steek it and turn it into a colorwork cardigan. And I thought that'd be a good idea because I wanted to wear a colorwork cardigan. However, I didn't want anything with too much contrast. So I think using this as the darker contrast color, and then using it with a cream color, just sort of a rustic white color, will work very well and still, you know, fit in with my wardrobe. As much as I love the really stark contrast of the white and the black in that sweater, I'm not quite sure how well it'll fit in with my wardrobe, although I do have pieces like that. I think it's mostly I'm afraid of having too many pieces like that. So that's what I'll be doing. Nothing too special about that. The next work in progress I have is a little baby sweater. And honestly, now this is turning out to be a child-sized sweater. I don't think this will fit a baby, but what do I know? I've never been around babies. So this is the Reindeer Pullover by Jill Wick. I showed this to you last week. Okay. This is the Reindeer Pullover by Jill Wick. I showed this to you last week, so you already know what's going on. Here's that yarn I used in my Guthrie sweater. It's held double with a tan yarn, and I ran out of it, so this front panel will be the only panel that has that neon yarn in it. So I'm going to use a similar colored yarn so there's not too much of a contrast in there, you know, between the different pieces that will be then seamed together. This is a gift knit, and I'm hoping to finish it sometime this week so I can get it mailed out, because I have some other items to mail out with this, and I'm getting tired of hiding that envelope from my cats. They want to chew on everything right now since they're babies and they're teething. I've had to hide my needles from them because they'll chew on the cords. Thank God it wasn't my Licca needles. They're the old needles that I was going to get rid of anyway, so hopefully they'll get over that soon, so I don't have to always worry about it. But yeah, this is turning out quite big. I'm not quite sure the gauge it was supposed to be knit at. I usually will look at the gauge it's knit at and then not pay attention because I'm impatient. But I believe I knit this at like a gauge of 7 stitches to the inch, so it's still quite stretchy and has a little bit of give, and I don't think it's too see-through, but I didn't want it to be too heavy because I wanted this to work throughout all the seasons because it is so late. So hopefully the little baby that will be receiving this will not overheat if they wear it, you know, during the spring, which I don't think they will because there are times when spring can be a little chilly. Hey, quit that. Oh, cats. So yeah, it has a garter stitch rib, and it doesn't really have ribbing around the neckline in the original pattern. However, I think I will put ribbing around the neckline in that contrast color that I will use for the rest of the sweater, so it ties it in together a little bit better. I might use contrast colors for the little cuffs and use the purple, but I don't want it to get too color blocky. I want the background color or the main color of the sweater to primarily be the same, so it's not too busy. But obviously, since I didn't take into account how much yarn I had, I'll have a little bit of trouble there, but I'm not in a rush, so hopefully I'll figure something out. If I have to dye the yarn myself to get a similar colorway, I will. So the next work in progress I have is my beekeeper's quilt, and you've seen this before. I had quite a lot of work done on it before, but I decided to change the color scheme last minute, so here it is. You've seen it, you know, earlier in the podcast. I was too excited to show it off. So this is my new color scheme. It's still fairly colorful, however, it is knit out of yarns that you could typically consider as neutrals. From a distance, you don't really see all of the vibrant speckles. But I did order a lot of yarn for this, and I'm going to have a huge ball of yarn that I just wind up so I don't have all of the little mini scraps lying around the house, and I won't get, you know, worried about seeing a bowl of minis when I, you know, have this magic cake. A lot of people will make magic yarn cakes for granny striped blankets, and I can see how this wouldn't typically work for a beekeeper's quilt if you want each hexapuff to be a solid color. So what I did with the magic cake, it was primarily just for organizational reasons, is I wound up all the yarn together, but I did not tie it in knots, so I don't have to clip it if I run out of a certain color of yarn, and then I can just select a different color that is similar to that. So I don't have hexapuffs that are like half tan, half pink, because that would bother me. I think that color scheme would sort of mess with the illusion of it looking like a honeycomb, because honeycombs typically aren't, you know, half one color, half the other. So yeah, one example of me substituting in a similar colored yarn is this little hexapuff. Here you can sort of see a little bit of a difference, not too much, and that's because I used 2 different yarns in this, and I actually held it double with some of my hand spun to make it a bit more solid looking. And this will actually be a hexapuff that I embroider over with some flower embroidery to, you know, make it look a bit more like a single puff and not like it's melting into a different one. But I'm fairly happy with the color scheme. I wanted to see how the colors would play together, so I did sew them together. The one thing I'm not happy about is this little gray guy right here. I think he just sticks out a little bit too much in the quilt when you view it from a distance. So I do think I'm going to go over that one with duplicate stitch with a slightly different colored yarn that is a bit more light and speckled, so it sort of disguises the darker color, and then maybe embroider over it again and put a little flower or a bee on it. But overall, I'm very happy with this project, and I'm going to aim to make 1 hexapuff a day after I finish all of my gift knitting and obligation knitting projects. So hopefully that'll happen. Probably not, because you know, stuff always happens and my attention has to, you know, go somewhere else. But that is my goal. After Christmas, I'm going to really focus on getting this thing done. I want it to be done before next year's holiday season. I'm not quite sure if that's a realistic goal, but that's what I'm aiming for. So the last thing I have to talk about today is a amazing scrummy yarn purchase I made. And when I saw this skein available, I did break my promise to myself and my little goal to myself to not purchase superwash yarn. So the skein we're talking about is from Knox Yarn Co. I believe this colorway is called Lucretia, and it's absolutely beautiful. This is on her Orpheus DK base. It's 100% superwash merino wool, 230 yards, 100 grams. And I think I might make some socks out of this. I'm not quite sure yet. I saw this on Instagram and it was just so beautiful. It's one of those skeins that I had to purchase right away because I fell in love with it. Some of this is definitely going to be in my beekeeper's quilt, and I'm not sure if I'll make anything colorwork out of this. I might make a pair of colorwork socks, although this yarn alone is just beautiful enough. I might make mittens. I honestly do not know. I want to put it in everything. I should have ordered a sweater's quantity of it because this is the first yarn I've seen that has been considerably speckled that I could see myself wearing every single day. So I don't know, maybe I'll wait for another shop update and maybe I'll knit a boxy out of it. I'm not sure. I've kind of considered making a little reindeer pullover for myself. Obviously I'd have to make it into adult size because I would not fit into this. But I think the background colors are very similar and I love the look of this. I think it'd be so cute to wear, you know, a reindeer sweater for the holidays. I think Christy Glass Knits is hosting a Christmas sweater knit along. I sort of watched her YouTube video while I was half asleep, so I'm pretty sure it's a knit along, and I can see myself wearing this as a Christmas sweater or all year. I don't care. So I might transfer this colorwork motif onto the boxy sweater by Hoki Locatelli. Although I'm not sure because I did notice the sleeves did seem a little bit tight on that sweater, so I might just find a simple baggy sweater pattern, maybe make it myself, or just put larger sleeves on the boxy sweater. I don't know. But I do really want to put this in a sweater, although I don't have enough yarn for a sweater, so I might have to special order it or maybe find a yarn similar to it. I could use this as the light contrast color as the deer and then use a darker yarn, although I'm really getting into wearing lighter neutral sweater colors and I think it'd be really cute. So I don't know, I'm just brainstorming right now, but some of it is definitely going to make it into my beekeeper's quilt because, I mean, that'll fit in. I started that beekeeper's quilt to satisfy my need for neon colors and speckled yarns like that, so I think I'm just going to order more of that yarn so I can knit with more of it. But anyways, that's the last bit of information I have to share this week. Hopefully there will be an episode out next week. No promises, because my job's hours are very, you know, they're very here and there. There's not a set schedule for me. It just depends on how much work there is that week, and then you get the work done. So yeah, the hours are irregular, and sometimes that can leave me quite exhausted. But if you'd like to keep up with me on other forms of social media, you can follow me on Instagram at Pikku Kimalainen or friend me on Ravelry. We do have a groups tab, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. If you want to introduce yourself, there is an introductions thread. So you can see what everybody's up to on there. And I get really happy when I see a new post. I've been thinking on filling out an introductions thread for myself as well, but maybe I'll save that for episode 10 or something, just to prove to myself that I'm really committed to this, because I'm just starting to get back into the swing of things and figuring out a healthy routine for myself. So I really appreciate you guys coming back to watch another episode. It makes me very happy to see all of your wonderful support. But anyways, bye.